Happy Earth Day, everyone! I ran out of Captain Planet games to play. And yeah, I know I used that line last year. It's called recycling. It's part of a thing you do on this day. Case in point. In 1990 saw Nintendo release Balloon Kid to Game Boy, a pseudo-sequel spin-off thing to the classic NES title Balloon Fight. However, this game never saw release in Japan until 1998, where it was released for Game Boy Color under the new name Balloon Fight GB. Oh, and since this was on Game Boy Color, it's also in color. Yippee. There's a couple other things that added to the thing, but first off, Balloon Fight GB was originally available as one of many games under the Nintendo Power Service, which has nothing to do with the one-time popular magazine most old-timers would know of, but rather a service in Japan that lets you purchase games and write them onto writable flash carts. Balloon Fight GB, as one would expect, is essentially Balloon Kid DX. Add a splash of color onto the graphics, as well as a new map screen that lets you save your progress via battery backup, as well as replay any previously cleared stages. Oh, and if you have a Super Game Boy on hand, you could play this on that and get a custom border and color scheme, which is awfully nice. And this is the part where we just recycle shit wholesale from the previous video because it's pretty much the same game. So, in Balloon Fight GB, you control Alice, the little girl who has to rescue her little brother from his own foolish behavior for playing with a bunch of balloons and being blown away as a result. Because sure, why not? Balloon Fight GB basically takes the balloon trip portion of the NES classic Balloon Fight and turns it into an auto-scrolling platformer of sorts where you move to the left, collect balloons, and avoid colliding with enemies. Much like in Balloon Fight, colliding with an enemy pops one of your balloons, making it harder for you to move around, but losing both balloons isn't an instant game over. If Alice manages to find solid ground, she could blow another pair of balloons and be airborne once more, and also be protected from harmful critters. But not so much falling into pits or getting crushed by moving scenery. Those will kill you no matter what. Now if you bounce a foe from above, you'll just bounce. No harm to either of you. Although some enemies and hazards will kill you no matter how you get touched. If you collect 20 balloons in a row without missing one, you'll hear a jingle and every balloon on the stage will turn into 2, and will stay this way until you miss one, at which point they revert back into one balloon. At some point you'll come across a power balloon that will float on screen, and picking it up will render you invincible for a short period, letting you knock off enemies but also increasing the scrolling speed somewhat, making collecting balloons a taller order. Sometimes you'll need to lose your balloons to access narrow passages, which can be done by pressing the B button while A is reserved for jumping and flapping in the air. And to get a new set of balloons, you press down to pump some air, and you keep doing it until you eventually get your balloons back. Balloon Fight GB boasts 8 stages with even-numbered stages ending with a boss fight of some sort for you to overcome, while odd-numbered stages have an exit that you just walk through and the stage is cleared. If you manage to collect all the balloons in a stage, you'll get a perfect bonus and a 1-up. If you've played Balloon Fight on NES, then you have some idea on how Balloon Fight GB works, except now it's a semi-platformer thing with proper level layouts and such. The game even incorporates the older title's bonus rounds that you can access by entering a giant Game Boy, where you attempt to collect all the balloons popping out of the pipes, and nabbing them all will net you a 1-up, and extra lives are fairly easy to come across in this game. Control is no different from that earlier title save for a button to detach balloons, which is to say pretty tight, as are the overall physics, which takes a bit to adjust to for first-time players but becomes quite natural once you get the hang of it. The game starts off relatively easy enough for you to get used to the way Alice controls and moves about, but by the halfway point of this journey things start to ramp up quite a bit and can be hectic. Now if you prefer something a little more old school in your balloon popping escapades, Balloon Fight GB also offers the balloon trip mode straight out of Balloon Fight, and that plays out the same way. Pop the balloons in an auto-scroller, trying to last as long as you can without crashing into bolts or getting gobbled up by fishies below. Again, if you've played Balloon Fight, this should be old hat. I mean literally old hat, except now you're playing a little girl and trying not to push the B button or else you'll regret it. There's also a versus mode via Game Link in which you and a friend play through a course collecting balloons, or so I'm told. Balloon Fight GB. It is a pleasant enough looking game, adopting as much of a cutesy cartoonish appearance as was possible in the scaling down of the sprites to make everything fit on the little Game Boy screen, and even then it feels like you're getting less on-screen real estate of the whole playfield. Also, sound is somewhat nice and whimsical, adapting a couple of themes from the older Balloon Fight game, and even recycling said themes wholesale which sound pleasant on Game Boy. Okay, I'm back. What did I miss? Not much? Okay, good. In terms of colorization, Balloon Fight GB looks fine for the most part. It looks like a Game Boy game that's been colored in, which is about as much as I would expect this sort of thing to be. The stage introductory screens, the intermissions, whatever you want to call them, look a little nicer, whereas before it was just white, now it's blue with a bit of shading on it. And the map screen looks fine for what limited functionality it's intended for, which is to get you from point A to point B and occasionally save your game. Nothing in terms of new audio, or at least none that I've noticed. Anyway, it's all pretty much the same game, nothing really new, audibly speaking. I'd imagine playing this on a plain Jane Game Boy, this would look more or less the same as the original Balloon Kit, save for the changes that they made. Like I said, the only real new addition here is the save system, aka the map, which lets you save your progress after each stage clear, and you can revisit previous stages to, I guess, perform better, I don't know, or maybe build up on extra lives. Not that it really matters, but I guess if you need the extra practice or whatever, I don't know, it's a thing you could do, I suppose. Overall, if you've played and enjoyed Balloon Kid on Game Boy, then Balloon Fight GB on Game Boy Color is pretty much the same game with a couple extra doohickeys and colors and bits like that. And if you haven't played Balloon Kid but have played Balloon Fight on NES, this is a semi-evolutionary take on that earlier classic title. And if you fit in neither category, then Balloon Kid is definitely worth checking out. Whether it's this version or not, it doesn't matter. Same great game underneath. This one has color and a map and a save, I guess, if that makes all the difference for a game that's only 8 stages and shouldn't take you that long to beat, but whatever, that's all I got. Bye!